Awesome. Thank you, Ryan. I really appreciate it. So we're here today to talk about Veeam Availability Orchestrator version 3, changing the game for DR. And as we mentioned, let's get this to advance. Okay, hello. I love technical difficulties right at the very beginning, just throw in a little excitement. So I am Jeannine Walter, and yes, my hair is NetApp blue, and Adam Bergh is joining me. So if you weren't muted, if you could mute yourself, I really appreciate it. It gets a little distracting if there's a lot of people talking in the background. And as we mentioned, we'll have a whole section at the end for QA. We'll try to monitor chat, but you'll have a chance to ask us any questions you want, and we are recording this. So let's get right into it. And let me first start by saying I'm going to cover a little bit about the market and trends and what's happening today in the IT industry, and talk a little bit about disasters. And then I'm going to turn it over, so it won't be all death by PowerPoint and Zoom. I'm going to turn it over to Adam, who's going to kind of talk about what VAO is and how it works. And then he's going to show you a demo. And I think that's going to be really exciting. So disaster recovery and business continuity is near and dear to my heart. It's something I did for 20 years in professional services. So I've been there, done that, seen it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how to prepare for that and how to take you to the next steps. So as we all know, disasters happen, right? Things happen. And usually we think about like the really big things going on in the world today, like the fires in California, the storms that are hitting the New Orleans area. You know, we always think about these things as being like giant, impactful events. But really, it can be something as simple as, for example, one time when I was working as a system administrator, do you remember the big buttons in the data center that controlled the power to the entire data center? Well, someone hit that, okay? And where I was working for an animal feed distributor, and when we hit that button, it actually took the power down to the entire data center, including all the chillers, everything, all the lights, everything. It took us approximately 9 hours to get everything turned back on. We had to turn all the air conditioners back on. We had to turn all the infrastructure back on, all the lights back on. I mean, that was a major disaster. And while that was happening, all of our distributed, so we had places all around the country that made feed. None of them could make any feed while the main data center was down. Yeah, that was a huge disaster. And there was no flood, there was no storm. That was just human error. So we have to remember that it's not just these monster disasters that make us think about, okay, this is something we need to be prepared for if we have a hardware failure, if we have something like a human error, right? So, and if you look at this study, 82% of businesses don't feel prepared. And when I used to go in and talk to people about disaster recovery, a lot of them would say to me, I'd say, you know, when was the last time you tested your disaster recovery plan? Maybe like 6 years ago, and only a third of our applications came back up. That is not cool, right? So, you know, we need to make sure that we're actually prepared for these things, that we know what to do in the case of a disaster, and we need to make sure that we have a plan that we can follow. So you can see the impact here, just like I was mentioning about being down, you know, almost half a day when someone hit that power button, and you can see the impact in dollars here. You know, this is a big deal when things go down, right? When you have a human error that causes things to go down, power failure, just like I was talking about, a network failure, ransomware, you know, all of those things are really impactful on your business. And as we see what's going on in the world today, you know, it's becoming more complex. There's a hybrid multi-cloud where we have data on-prem, we have data in private cloud, we have data in public cloud. You know, that makes it a lot more complex to deal with everything when that's going on. And our entire data centers and our way of doing business has gotten way bigger. So it's bigger, it's more complex. We have less time to do planning, so we're doing more with less. So we have less resources, less money, less time. And what we don't always think about is we have like a skills shortage on people who really know how to do hybrid multi-cloud. So those architects that understand the cloud world as well as the on-prem data center and how to manage all of that. So that becomes increasingly important, that we have enough, that we've done enough planning with the limited resources we have and the limited time and the limited personnel that we have to make sure that we're really actually planning for something like a disaster that could happen. So again, as I was mentioning, not just part of digital transformation is speed, being able to move at the speed of light, but that also comes into play with our business continuity and data protection plans too. So our data protection capabilities have to be able to react with speed too. If you remember the days of old when, as an example, I was a system administrator, doing backups and making sure everything was working. And at 4:30 one afternoon, a DBA came to me and said, I have corruption in a database. And I was like, oh no, because I know what that's going to mean. I'm going to have to stay late and I'm going to have to call Iron Mountain and recall tapes and mount the tapes and restore the database. And it's like, this is going to be an all-night affair. How many people can wait that long now? Right? That's ridiculous. Nobody can wait that long anymore. So part of our data protection strategy is the ability to recover really fast too, right? I want to do that instant VM recovery. I want that back online in 2 minutes, right? I don't want to have to think about it. I don't want to have to worry about it. I just want to be able to restore at that kind of speed. And that's really transforming the whole world of IT. And as I mentioned earlier, hybrid multi-cloud is going to be around for years to come. We're still going to have traditional on-prem data centers. We're still going to have those private clouds, the public cloud, those things out at the core, out at the edge. And we're going to have to make sure that whatever we pick for our data protection strategy, it can cover that whole thing. And as we see the strategy moving forward, we want to move away from these silos of data and these isolated pockets of data that we have, and that can happen in a hybrid multi-cloud world, and move more to this data fabric strategy where it really doesn't matter where the data is. We can seamlessly move, manage, protect, and architect this data with a common thread of data management services, right? So in the end, when it comes down to my user, they don't care where the file is. They just want to make sure that when they click on it, they can get it. And the same goes for their data protection, right? I don't care where the data is. I don't care if you're restoring it from the cloud. I don't care if you're restoring it from edge. I just want to make sure that if I delete this file or this folder or this database, I can get it back. And that's where, the heart of that digital transformation, the heart of your data being at the core of your business and making sure it's always available, it's always ready for you, that's what NetApp and Veeam are here to do for you. And if you look at what the world is saying, 76% are saying that the cost of dealing with inaccessibility, disruptions like ransomware, corrupted data, things like that is a huge concern. That's what's keeping people up at night, right? And we want to make sure that we can address those concerns and make sure we put those to bed so you can sleep well at night. So you're not worrying about that. That's not a stressful factor anymore, and having that data available all the time when you need it at the simple click of a button is what it's all about, all right? And then also being able to make sure that that data is agile and useful to you, that's a real concern as well. And that's what we're able to do to you with the whole concept of the data fabric and bringing Veeam into that as part of the protection of that entire data fabric. So as I mentioned earlier, most people get really excited when I live in Florida. So as soon as I hear a hurricane coming, I'm like, okay, do I have bottled water, all of that? People are creatures of habit. And most people don't want to change their routine or think about disaster recovery until that hurricane's barreling towards you, right? My phone used to ring off the hook as soon as, something happened. There was a fire, there was a flood, there was a hurricane. All of a sudden, everybody and their brother wanted me to come in and do disaster recovery planning and disaster recovery drills and make sure they could restore their data. But the fact is that you need to be thinking about that long before that, right? Because I mentioned earlier, it could be something as simple as somebody clicking that power button, or in the case of another customer I had, someone clicked on one of those phishing emails and boom, it went out and corrupted a 2 petabyte database, right? And what they soon found out is that, yeah, the backup administrator was saying backup complete, backup complete, backup complete, but they were running no type of simulation or testing to make sure that that backup was useful. So what happened when that person corrupted that 2 petabyte database is that they found out that those 3 weeks of, yes, the backup ran, yes, the backup ran, yes, the backup ran, turned out that none of those were valid. And they had to go back 3 weeks to restore that database. No one was happy about that. right? So you don't want to start thinking about, your disaster recovery planning just when there's a hurricane or a tornado or something like that heading for you. You want to make sure you have that in your daily plans. And yes, sometimes it can be difficult to think about that, Sometimes it can be hard to come up with a business continuity plan, You have to make sure that you're planning for planned events, for unplanned events. You might want to even do a data migration, right? And when you're talking about a shared infrastructure, negotiating an outage window, you can't go back to those days where we had Sundays from 8 to 12, we had an outage window where we could do, upgrades, do migrations, do downtime. No one can do that anymore, right? So we have to have continuity plans in place that we can fail over to another data site, fail over to the cloud, whatever it is we want to do. We have to plan that in advance to make sure we can actually take advantage of that. And remember that downtime isn't just a loss of dollars and people sitting idle, that loss of productivity. It can be your entire reputation, right? If your website is down and you're a commerce website, and I get that spinning wheel of death when I click on your website, what's going to happen? I'm going to go to your competitor, if I need something from a hardware store and that hardware store's website is down, I'm going to go to a different website and I'm going to get my stuff from there if yours is down. So, that loss of reputation, it's not just the loss of dollars and productivity, it's that loss of reputation too. And you also need to remember when you're taking into consideration a business continuity plan, like a lot of us are technical people. And we get really excited and down into the weeds about, recovery time objective and recovery point objective, how much data can we lose and how long does it take us to recover? But there's way more to that than just, when you're talking about business continuity, than just the technical aspects, right? You need to talk about the business, right? And those people that own the databases, their focus and their thoughts on what's going on in the world are totally different from our technical capabilities. So you need to talk to the business owners and the line of sight business people and the DBAs and the people that own those databases. And that is part of creating your service level agreement. And it also has to match up with your financial needs, right? So the business might say, I want zero downtime, right? But when you look at the financial aspects of that and coming up with something that'll give you an RTO and RPO of zero, they may not be able to afford that for everything. Right? So you want to take into consideration the business aspects of your SLA, the financial aspects of your SLA, and also technically what you can do, right? Can I make a zero RTO and RPO? Maybe it's a 5-minute RTO and RPO that's more realistic. So those are the things you have to bring into and account for when you're creating a service level agreement. Bringing all of those things together, so in the middle of this Venn diagram, we can make the business happy, we can hit our financial goals, and we can meet our technical capabilities as well, all coming together and unifying to create our SLA. And a lot of people forget about that. They just get in the weeds of the RTO and RPO, and they don't think about the business and financial impacts of creating a business continuity plan. So again, it goes back to making sure that you plan. You know what your tier 1, tier 0, tier 2 businesses are, what those applications are. You know the ones you have to restore first and that are critical to getting your business up and running again. And you'll remember, if you remember the days of old where you would go into, a SunGuard or something like that, or a colo location and test your business continuity plan, right? It was a drag. Half the time, only a third of things would come up. You'd be making notes along the way to make sure, okay, did this work? Did that work? What can we learn from this? Can we go back and replicate this? Can we make sure that the next time, maybe 2/3 of all the applications will come back up again? It was hard. It took a lot of time. It took a lot of planning. And the fact of the matter was, too, that the person writing the plan may not be the person executing it in a disaster. So in the case of a hurricane here in Florida, I may have to evacuate. So I may not be the one that's running the plan. So one of the key things in this is planning and then making sure you can make it simple, make it fast, and make it repeatable, right? So that someone with an IT background would be able to run your continuity plan. And you may be saying to yourself, wow, this seems like super complicated. I'm gonna have to write this plan, figure out how to replicate it, make sure I update it all the time after I run it if there's any issues or problems. it sounds like that's going to be really difficult. Well, that's what we're here today to discuss, and that's what we're here to make easy and simple for you. And Adam's going to go into the details of that in just a minute and show you an awesome demo on VAO v3 that I'm sure you're going to love, but we'll talk about that in just a minute. So yeah, we're here, we're joining together to make business continuity and disaster recovery easy for you. So how do we do this better together? Well, one of the things we want to do for you is we feel your pain. We've been there, right? We know what it's like to be resource constrained. We know what it's like to have all these data silos. We know what it's like to have idle data. We know what it's like to have hybrid multi-cloud where we have data all over the place, edge, core, cloud. It's complex. It's difficult. It makes it hard for you to go to bed at night and know that all your data is going to be there, that your data is going to be available and accessible to you whenever you need it. And what we want to do is drive business outcomes for you. We want to make this all easy. You want to manage your resources? We'll give you, that common data management services all the way across the data fabric where we don't care where the data is. We'll make it easy for you to manage it. And the same goes for Veeam, right? Make it easy for you to manage your recovery plans, make it simple for you to do that and to actually derive outcomes from your data, right? That's the whole idea behind NetApp and Veeam better together. And you'll notice that we've had a long history of our partnership, right? Way back in 2014, NetApp was one of the very first ones to join the Alliance program with Veeam. And you can see throughout the years, we don't rest on our laurels, right? So we were one of the very first ones to integrate our snapshots into Veeam and let you actually manage and use replication, array-based replication under the covers of Veeam. We were one of the very first hardware vendors to do that, right? So it's really exciting. But we don't just, kind of sit there and stagnate. We have velocity going on all the time, and we're constantly innovating. So we take things to the next level each time. So as StorageGrid comes out, NetApp and Veeam introduced the supported architecture, and Veeam supports StorageGrid. And now with version 10 and NAS support, and with VAO v3, we're really excited about VAO v3 taking advantage of SnapMirror support. So there's never a point where we're just sitting there. We're constantly innovating and constantly expanding our relationship. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Adam, who's going to kind of walk you through some of what VAO can offer to you today.
Thanks so much, Jeannine. Again, hi, everyone. I'm Adam Bergh with Veeam Software. Just a little bit more about me. I'm Veeam's Senior Global Architect for NetApp Solutions. So I basically think about NetApp and Veeam all day long here at Veeam Software, working on new integrations, new joint technology solutions, new ways to leverage each other's technologies in new and innovative ways to deliver unique joint value that we couldn't do without each other's technologies coming together and building best of breed solutions. And one of the things that we're here to talk to you today is one of the results of that joint technology development solution engineering that we've done together. And that's Veeam Availability Orchestrator version 3. So, a lot of my where does this tool come from? Veeam Availability Orchestrator. Of course, we've got a tool out there called Veeam Backup and Replication. So, is that enough? So, a lot of our customers saying, I've got backups. I've got these replicas going on, between sites. Isn't that a DR plan? And the answer is no. You've got backups and backups and DR, we sort of, in business continuity, we sort of separate these as two entirely different concepts. You need to have a comprehensive backup and recovery plan for your organization, but you also need to have a comprehensive business continuity and disaster recovery plan. And they require completely separate thinking and separate technologies under the hood and for your organization and thought processes for your organization to actually accomplish two entirely separate tasks, from actually just doing basic data recovery to entire disaster recovery and data center level failover events. And in comes something called Veeam Availability Orchestrator to help with the disaster recovery orchestration. So this is, where does this come from? Where does something like a DR orchestration tool come from? And I could probably spend literally an hour with just this one slide up here, and I'll try not to spend that much time on here because I know we want to get to what is this product, how does it work, and I want to get to a live demo of Veeam Availability Orchestrator for you all today. Now, we talked about what is business continuity in disaster recovery. So business continuity is sort of the entire building up of the processes for your organization. And then the disaster recovery and planning is sort of the implementation of those processes and those policies. And Jeannine touched on what we call the SLA policies that your organization must have. And the SLAs primarily that we're interested in are what are your RPO policies and what are your RTO policies. So we toss around those terms a lot, and RPO again means that's your recovery point objective. And to me, RPO is how much data are you willing to lose, right? That's really what when we talk about RPO. And our RTO is our recovery time objective. How fast can we or do we need to bring this data back online in the event of a true disaster? And your organization needs to set these RPO policies and RTO policies on all your applications and all your data before you can actually identify what sort of infrastructure and technologies and processes need to be purchased to actually implement those SLA policies, because there's a huge gap in what it costs to have a RPO of 0 and let's say an RPO of 1 hour or an RPO of 24 hours. And in terms of bandwidth and hardware and actual technology involved in achieving those different SLA policies around RPO. And RTO policies of, sometimes there's an RPO policy of 0 or near 0 or, an hour to 2 hours. How long does it take to bring that data online? So if you want truly those, the flexibility on being able to implement RPO of 0 and the lowest possible RTOs, you need to look at an orchestration tool like Veeam Availability Orchestrator. And that's really where this tool comes in play. We need to lower the RPOs, and that's where we've partnered with NetApp. Because the way that we can actually lower RPOs and actually achieve an RPO of 0, it's not something you can do without a hardware-based replication technology like SnapMirror. The SnapMirror synchronous replication allows us to have the flexibility of RPO 0, but also flexibility to implement asynchronous replication to, sometimes it's more appropriate to have a 15-minute, 1 hour, or 24-hour level of RPO, depending on the criticality of the application, the data, and there's always hardware and bandwidth restraints and restrictions. So we need the flexibility that something like ONTAP SnapMirror replication can provide. And then lowering that reaction time, that's really, and lowering the RTO time, that's really where the VAO piece comes in. We want to have a plan that's ready to go, that's tested, that's validated every single day, that when you're ready to, or when you actually might have a disaster, you've got one-click reaction time to implement that policy, and you know that the policy is going to work. So that's, VAO can actually reduce that reaction time to the bare minimum level by having a plan that's ready to go, ready to implement at the moment's notice, that anybody can implement. Not just the people or your propeller heads, as we like to call them, that built the plans. You can set that up for anyone to implement that has the appropriate level of access to do that. And then with that recovery time, implementing, of course, the hardware capabilities of ONTAP to bring those RTOs down as low as possible by leveraging hardware-based recovery. That really minimizes this whole, compresses this whole reaction time, recovery time to bring your data online as fast as possible to get to that state where you're back at that full functionality and back to normal usage. Next slide, please. All right, so enter Veeam Availability Orchestrator. The key capabilities here, all right, of course, is that reliable recovery. Having everything completely orchestrated and being application centric, being able to test that constantly, even in production. So being able to actually test your disaster recovery plan while while things are normal, while situation is normal, and being able to test your disaster recovery plans in the middle of the day, anytime you want, or even have it scheduled. You can have your DR plans automatically scheduled and tested, and have it automatically send you reports on whether or not your DR plan is actually meeting those SLAs that you've identified for your organization. So, when we talked about setting those SLAs, those are actually something you input into Veeam Availability Orchestrator. And we tell you through our automated reporting that can actually be emailed, and this is great C-level type of information. We're meeting our SLA. If we've got an RPO of 1 hour and an RTO of 3 hours, can we actually meet that? And can we prove it, right? And that's what Veeam Availability Orchestrator is all about. So the non-disruptive testing, the scheduled on-demand testing, the readiness checks, and the audit trails, very, very critical. And this is what distinguishes something like a traditional backup application, backup and recovery application, with a true DR orchestration and readiness application like Veeam Availability Orchestrator. So those are the key differences between a traditional backup and recovery and a true DR orchestration tool. So Veeam Availability Orchestrator version 3. So the key capability here is being able to leverage ONTAP, snapshot, and SnapMirror replication technology. Without this technology, we just couldn't achieve the lowest possible RPO and RTOs that are necessary for most large-scale organizations. Prior to version 3, all we could use was our Veeam's software-based replica technology and our backup files. That works great. It's really nice if you have disparate storage or non-NetApp based storage. You can still use that technology, but for the true power of a DR orchestration tool, Veeam knew that NetApp has the best snapshot and replication technology in the industry, and that's why we chose to exclusively work with NetApp on integrating their technology into Veeam Availability Orchestrator. And that's what we're going to be demonstrating here today in my lab. So just to recap here before we jump into the lab, and I got one quick diagram of what my lab looks like here. One-click simplicity, lightning fast, DR and migration. So sometimes you have a planned migration. I think this is something that we didn't quite talk about. Like, let's say that you're doing your power is going down for 48 hours in your primary data center. We can do an orchestrated failover, not only an emergency level failover. With this fully validated plans and the assured compliance, which is the key capability here, being able to assure that your DR plans are going to be functional. Through our failover testing, our fully automated data lab testing, and that actionable documentation that tells you exactly where there might be a problem, so you can remediate very, very quickly. So here's what we're going to be looking at in my lab here. Two separate vCenter infrastructures, one that we call our production site, and one that we call our DR site. We've got ONTAP as the storage layer underneath both data centers, presenting data stores as that the VMware data stores here that our VMs reside on. We're replicating those data stores via SnapMirror from the primary ONTAP cluster to the DR site ONTAP cluster. And then Veeam Availability Orchestrator, it's just software. We reside in we deployed in a Windows server that could be a virtual machine, it could be a physical server, but that does the orchestration of the DR failover, and that's what we're going to be demonstrating in my lab. So let's get right to why we're here. We want to see this technology in action. So let me get my lab up here, and we will share it out. Give me just a second to get my share going. And please let me know if everyone can see that now. Jeannine, can you see my lab?
Yep, looks good. Sure.
Great. Okay, so we're in my lab. This is going to be a completely live demo, so if anything goes wrong, please forgive, because that's kind of how things go here in my lab. What I'm going to be, let me log into my vCenters here. This is going to be my production vCenter here, and then I'm going to log into, here's my DR vCenter. And so you can see that I've got two vCenters here. I've got my couple of ONTAP systems here. So if you want to see what's happening underneath the hood in ONTAP, happy to show that as well. What I'm going to do is jump right over into Veeam Availability Orchestrator and right into our dashboard here. So this is Veeam Availability Orchestrator. It's really nice. It's all HTML5 driven interface. So this is all clean, modern interface is what we're looking at here. I'm in, and just in my dashboard, I've got some basic things set up right now, but I'm going to take you through an entire orchestration plan set up today, and we're going to actually run the orchestration plan so we can actually see the failover from one data center to another. So you can see I've got a nice dashboard here that kind of shows my check marks here of all the vCenters that I have connected. Now, one Veeam Availability Orchestrator could be all you need to orchestrate. Maybe you've got 6, 7 sites, 6, 7, 8 vCenters out there. You just need one Veeam Availability Orchestrator to manage all of that infrastructure. You can see that my storage systems here, these are my ONTAP storage systems that I've added to Veeam Availability Orchestrator. Now we add these at the storage virtual machine level. That's how we add these in here, and I'll show you how that works here in just a minute. And it tells you how many data stores that we see are being replicated here. So we got kind of green check marks. License usage, I'll answer the license question right now. We're licensed at the per VM level. Veeam Availability Orchestrators is sold in packs of 10 protected VMs. So it's very economical here. But it is, this is a standalone product. So if you're not a Veeam customer, don't have any other Veeam backup, maybe you're happy with whatever backup tool you're using today, you can buy a Veeam Availability Orchestrator completely standalone. Of course, we work great with existing Veeam customers as well. I'm going to kind of go down through, I'm in my setups sort of pane here, my administration pane. I'm going to kind of just go through here and kind of show you all what's in these side panels before we exit the administration and we go to actually build a plan. And this is the point where you guys can come off mute if you want and ask verbal questions. So happy to take verbal questions here. So I'm just going to kind of go through here my Veeam Availability Server. So this is kind of just the name of my server here. I can add additional contact information here. This is my agents into any existing Veeam backup and replication servers that I might have out there. If you don't have a Veeam backup and replication server, we'll actually install one under the hood in Veeam Availability Orchestrator. So don't worry if you're not a Veeam customer, you don't have an existing Veeam backup and replication server out there. But if you have multiples out there, we can add all of those in here and we'll pull data from those as well. This is where I add my vCenter servers here. So any of my, so my primary site, the secondary site, or any vCenters that I have that you want VAO to orchestrate, that's where we just, we add them here just by simply clicking the add button and adding your vCenter name and credentials. Storage system. This is where I add my NetApp storage system or my NetApp storage virtual machines. Just by simply clicking add here, you can see that I'm adding my storage virtual machine IP address and my credentials, and that's it. And we do the automatic discover, and then I can give them a quick friendly name here where I've named my two as HQ and DR. Recovery locations. Again, I've named my my recovery sites and my primary sites HQ and DR. Kind of gave them a friendly name. I want to kind of go through here and kind of show you when I click on my my sites. So this is sort of what's my primary site vCenter, what's my secondary site vCenter, and we can make use of vCenter tags to sort of tag which infrastructure you want VAO to have access to. So if you only want VAO to have access to certain infrastructure, certain ESXi hosts, or certain data centers inside those vCenters, this is where we add those here. And we add the compute resources here. So for example, in my HQ side, I've only given access to my sandbox. So this is not all the ESXi hosts that's managed by this vCenter, but only the ones that I wanted VAO to have access to here. Which is my sandbox environment with these 4 hosts. I click on storage systems. This is where I tell it this is the storage system that belongs to that that vCenter. And then network mapping. So this is where I map my my network resources between HQ and DR. So if I've got a port group in my vCenter here that's named a certain VLAN or a certain name, what does it marry with in my DR side in case I have different names of those port groups, so that when I fail over VMs that are attached to a single network port group in one vCenter, it automatically assigns those VMs to that corresponding port group at the DR side. And then re-IP rules. So this is critical. So if you've got different subnets, maybe you don't have layer 2 connectivity between your primary and DR side, and you actually need to, hold on, hopefully it comes back. My VPN just dropped.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Yes. Live demos.
Let me
Yippee!
reconnect to my VPN, guys. Let's try that again. Back into my lab here. So live demos, right? Okay, we're back. So re-IP rules. So this is where VAO can automatically remap subnets for your virtual machines as they fail over. So if I'm, for example, 192.168.10.x in my primary site, and I'm 192.168.11.x in my DR site, I can actually set that mapping up right here. And as part of my failover plans that I built, will automatically re-IP your virtual machines from the primary site to the secondary site automatically. So that can be set up here. In my lab, of course, it's all layer 2. I don't need to re-IP my VMs, so I did not set up a re-IP rule here. But if I click edit on that, I can kind of take you through these mappings. So this is where I would define my re-IP rules here. So that's what that looks like. So really pretty easy dialog boxes to follow through. Reporting, this is just where we can automatically send out those reports. Like I said, everything can be automated with Veeam Availability Orchestrator. If you want VAO to do its own DR testing completely on its own, and then just send you an email with a report attached as a PDF that tells you, hey, it passed. That's what we can set up here. Pretty interesting stuff. What detail you want in the reports that are being sent to you. Pretty cool stuff here. Plan steps. So VAO comes with a bunch of predefined steps that you can apply to your DR plan. And then we have the ability to add any sort of custom sort of plan steps that you want in here as well. So these are the global ones that are available to all plans. And if I want to add new global plan steps here that are available to all my plans. Now, maybe you've got a custom application that needs a certain service started or checked before the next phase of the DR plan can go for it, or a certain script, or maybe you've got something that needs to be orchestrated that's completely outside of VMware. A common one might be something like SVM DR for a CIF server, and I wanted that orchestrated in here. I can add a script in here and add it to my plans. So you can see these are the ones that we've added as built in, but then you can click add here and add anything you want here. So this might be a script that starts a custom service or anything that you want. You can add it right into this as a global step that's available to any plan that we build going forward in the future. This is just UI timeout. RBAC, right, of course, is critical here. And Jeannine touched on this earlier around plan authors versus plan operators, right? So the plan author, he might be in that hurricane zone and he might not be available to operate this plan. So you can specify certain other individuals in your organization that are allowed to execute the DR failover plan in the event of a true DR that aren't necessarily part of the plan authors here. So this is where you can specify different Active Directory people that are able to just edit and create the plans, and some that are just able to execute the plans. So you might be able to add a few people here that might be they live in a different city or they live in the DR site city that are able to execute this stuff. Data labs, this is where we set up our functionality for using our data labs functionality to actually run our DR plans during the middle of the day in testing. We actually provision a virtual router that we then provision all the test VMs behind. That way, this is sort of the core functionality. How we're able to test the DR plans in the middle of the day is through our data labs capabilities here. And then plan components. So if I want to be able to hide certain data stores from being available to plan authors and other things like that, I can exclude certain infrastructure pieces from vCenter from being not allowed to be used by a vCenter and such. I'm sorry, but I can exclude certain tasks from not being available for my plan authors. And then my licensing here, right? What I'm licensed for and how many that I'm using. So that's the administration portion. This is the stuff that you set up once basically, and then going forward, you're basically in this main section where we have where you do most of your work here in this orchestration plans section. So I'll pause right there to see if there's any questions so far before we sort of build a brand new DR plan and then actually execute it.
I've been answering some of them, but one of the ones that came out that I don't know if you want to just table till the end was to compare and contrast VAO and SRM. And we can talk about pricing. There was another question about pricing. We can talk about the DR packs at the end too. So I don't know if you want to handle that now or if you want to wait till the end.
Yeah, let me
answering the question.
Let me go through the plan building, and then at the end, if we have time, I'll try to get into a compare and contrast because SRM sort of this. So VMware Site Recovery Manager is the direct competitor here. We're basically the only two tools that do this sort of thing. So if you're familiar with SRM and what it does and the value there's a lot of similar value. I think there's some cool things that we do that they don't, that sort of differentiate this. Number one, there's no plugins or extra pieces. We're sort of an all-in-one sort of solution. So much easier in terms of deployment and setup, of course. And then things like automation, being able to schedule our testing and spit out the reports on an automated basis. Those are some of the primary differences here between the two tools. And of course, we're designed to be much friendlier on the pocketbook, of course, in Site Recovery Manager. So let's go in and build a brand new recovery plan. So I'm just going to click on, you can see I've got one out here, but I want to build a brand new one. So let's go to our manage and I give our plan name, and we'll call this our demo ONTAP DR plan. I can give a description here. I can give the primary contact information here for this plan that's visible to the plan operators in case they need to figure out, okay, who am I supposed to contact here in the event something goes wrong. So this is my first choice I need to make. So we talked about what was available in prior to version 3, which was Veeam replicas and Veeam backups from a orchestration standpoint. The new one in version 3 is storage. So this is what I'm going to select when I want to use ONTAP based storage for my DR plans. So I click next, and okay, so the next thing it's going to show me are what are my data stores that are available that are being replicated. So we'll automatically filter out any non-ONTAP data stores, any ONTAP data stores that are not replicated, or today we're filtering out anything but snap mirrors. So we're sort of only looking at snap mirrored data stores that are available in both of these centers here. So you can see that I can click these, I can click view VMs, I can see what VMs are on those. For the purposes and speed of this demo, I'm only going to select one data store. I could select all of these and would add all the VMs in those data stores to my plan. But for just the speed of this demo, when I do my failover, we're just going to do one data store, which is just going to be 3 VMs here. Next. Okay, so my next option here is if any sort of problem happens, what do I want the default behavior to be? Proceed with the plan or halt the plan. Do I want to recover each a VM in the plan simultaneously or in sequence? How many VMs do I want to boot up simultaneously? So this is sort of to prevent that boot storm effect. So, if I'm recovering, 1,000 VMs, I can't boot up 1,000 VMs at once. It's going to demolish the storage. Or maybe I've got off flash and I can handle 100 VMs booting up at the same time. Or maybe I've just got SATA disk or some slow disk over there. And this is where I can adjust that sort of boot storm effect here on how many VMs I want to boot up at the same time. Okay, this is what do I want from a default standpoint on all VMs. Now I'm going to show you how we go back in and edit the plan individually and do some custom things to each VM and on the plan and add different things depending on if it's an Exchange server or if it's an AD server. Or I can add different things per VM, but this is the default steps. The default here would be to register the VM, boot it up, and then check the VM heartbeat. I'm actually going to remove the check VM heartbeat here because that'll sort of speed up our demo. But this is where I can add those default actions here. Now, this is what we spend so much time talking about RTO and RPO is in our PowerPoint. This is where you actually set those policies, because when we test our plan, we're going to tell you if you met your policies or not. So my RTO here, how long does it take to actually recover my plan? If you've got an RTO of 1 hour, being able to recover from a DR scenario in 1 hour, that's where I set this. Or maybe this is 2 hours, or maybe it's 30 minutes, right? My target RPO, right? How much data am I willing to lose? And I want, this is my policy that I need to have set. Prior to this, I'm going to set set this to 1 hour. Actually, I'll set this to 2 hours. This will just make sure that my oldest data is only 2 hours old at max, right? Otherwise, we're going to throw you an error when we do our testing. Reports. So of course, we've got a bunch of default reports in multiple languages here. You can actually customize these reports. You can add your own logos into them. So there's things you can do to modify these default reports here from Veeam. I'll just select the Veeam default template here. Report scheduling. Remember, we can schedule these reports to tell you, is your plan ready to go, right? This is not actually testing the actual failover with data labs and all that, but this is just kind of testing to see if anything's changed in your VMware environment or with your ONTAP environment that might have broken your DR plans. Like maybe your ONTAP replication got broken somehow. This will be a good way to inform you of that. And then the readiness checker here, of course, is going to check everything and create a report. I'm going to click finish. It's going to create this plan initially and then give me my initial readiness check. So you can see that didn't take very long and I've passed it. So I'm just going to go over here and look at these, show you these reports real quick. Here's the one that we just built, my readiness check. You can see it's a success. I'm going to click on this. It's a PDF. So this is a nice report here that spits out everything. Here's my RPO and RTO here. It's going to tell you that so far at least we're passing the RPO piece because we're actually checking the ONTAP-based replication in this to see if we're meeting this RPO. So if let's say my ONTAP hadn't replicated in 2 hours, maybe it's 3 hours old replication, we would actually fail this and we would flag it. And you know that your ONTAP replication is not meeting the RPO here. So that's being checked in here, checking all your licensing, checking versions of everything. Basically making sure that, yeah, can I actually execute this failover plan? Is everything good with all the vCenters? Is everything good with all my network mapping? So it's doing all that stuff under the hood to make sure that this DR plan is actually something I can execute. I'm going to edit this DR plan though and kind of show you some of the advanced things that we can do there. So I'm just going to click on it here and click edit. So you can see that we've got some pre-plan steps, my data store, my post-plan steps. Inside this middle section here, this is where I can actually go in here and modify each one of these different VMs. Maybe I need to add an additional script somewhere in here. Maybe I need to change the order that we execute these steps. I can rearrange the order of these VMs. I can add individual steps in here. Maybe maybe this is a SQL server that I need to add special SQL steps to, or maybe it's my Exchange server and I need to add some service starts in here. This is where I add individual actions to any individual VMs as part of my plan. So this is sort of the meat of customizing my plan and adding individual capabilities and scripts and processes in that actually are the meat of a true DR plan, because you don't just boot up all your VMs all at once, right? Certain VMs need to start up before others. So this is where you set that up. And like, for example, I need my SQL up before my application servers come up, before my web servers come up. This is where that's all orchestrated. And this is the bulk of what you're going to be doing when you're editing one of these plans, is making sure that your VMs are booting up in the proper order, the proper services are starting before others. You're checking those services are started before starting the next VM, right? This is to make sure that you can bring your entire organization up online and everything actually works. And then, of course, testing it all. I can add additional custom steps in my pre-plan if I want to here as well, and then also my post-plan. So as I'm, after everything's executed, maybe I need to do something that's in a physical server or it's up in the cloud or something else as part of this. I can add additional steps anywhere in this process that include any sort of customizations that you want as part of this plan. And then if I need to save it, I just click save here. And then of course we want to do a readiness check afterwards just to make sure we didn't break anything. You can see that we're past here. Okay, so I think we're ready. Let's execute this one. And what I want to do is execute this plan. I'm going to bring up both vCenters. You can kind of see what's happening during an actual failover. So I'm actually going to enable this plan, right? So right now it's disabled. I'm going to right click here, manage, make sure that this is enabled. That means we're ready to actually execute this plan should we need it. And then we'll go ahead and click launch on it. So this is a real failover. This is, I'm doing not a test, but an actual failover. It's actually going to be bringing the VMs offline on the primary site and bringing them up on the DR site. Now, if we detect that the VMs are up and online on the primary site, we're going to do a nice soft shutdown. So this is sort of like this data center migration sort of workflow rather than a true hard failover. Use the most recent snapshot. So I could actually specify a timestamp of a particular snapshot if I wanted to, but of course, so I'm going to use the most recent snapshot. This is the ONTAP snapshot. This is cool here. Reprotect the storage after failover. This is actually going to reverse the ONTAP replication automatically for me so that when I'm ready to fail back, everything's ready to go. So, so if I'm taking a 24-hour outage at my primary site and I need to fail over, VAO is automatically going to flip all the replication relationship and start replicating everything back the other direction. So really cool capability here and feature. And last thing, not least, is going to tell us, are we ready? Of course, we're successful. So let's go ahead and execute this. So that's running. I'm going to actually click on this, and it's going to take us into those steps. You can see what's happening in my pre-planned steps. This is really cool. You can actually click on any one of these to see where we're at in the process here and what we're actually doing. So you can see we're doing VM control first. We're shutting down the VMs that are part of this plan. And then, of course, this is the storage level failover that's going to be next. So let me bring up my vCenter. Here's my primary vCenter. So in here are my 3 VMs. You can see down in the recent tasks, we actually initiated a soft shutdown of those. So we did a nice clean shutdown on those VMs. I'm going to flip back over. This is my DR site, and then I'm going to sort of bring up my VAO layered on top of this. Okay, so we're on to the storage failover portion of our plan. And you can see exactly what we're executing against ONTAP in this storage failover section. You can see that we're working on a snap mirror. We're breaking the snap mirror relationship. We're successfully mounting these data stores. Can we see my vCenter in the back end here? Okay, so here's what's happening. You can see stuff happening on my DR side. And look, we've got VMs being registered now on my DR cluster. So we've actually mounted new data stores here. Here's the data store 1. That's the only data store that I have part of this plan. And my storage failover is complete, and now we're on to processing our VMs. So you can see we're processing all 3 VMs simultaneously. And we're running our register VM and boot. So if I click on this, you can actually dive deep into this. This is where you might see IP addresses being remapped and stuff like this, networks being remapped. See that starting the VM. Let's go back over to, oh look, and our VMs are already up and running here. And you can see that these are booted. Pop back over here. So basically, we're just waiting for these VMs to finish booting, and then we'll move on to the next portion, which is basically the reprotecting of the data stores. Remember, we talked about we've automatically are going to reverse the resync process in ONTAP. So while it's running, these are just takes a minute. We're going to wait just a little bit to allow those VMs to boot. Any questions here so far?
And Adam, while you're talking about that, since in the interest of time, it is 1:58. So, maybe we talk a little bit about the DR pack for just a minute, because there were a couple of questions that came up about pricing. So, if you want to talk about the DR pack and how it's priced in packs of 10, and how you also have the standalone pricing for critical VMs, and explain maybe a little, if you want me to bring the slide up, or if you want to just talk to it.
We've got this thing that's called DR pack. So if you're a Veeam backup and replication customer today already, we're selling packs of 10 VMs at a steep discount on Veeam Availability Orchestrator. So talk to your Veeam account representative about this product, and specifically mention DR pack if you're already a Veeam backup and replication customer. And this thing is very, very economical from a pricing standpoint. Purchased in packs of 10. I will mention that from a licensing standpoint, you do need to license all the VMs that are in any data store that Veeam is protecting here with our NetApp integration. So if there's 100 VMs in a single data store, you'll need to license all 100 VMs. Unfortunately, there's no way for us to sort of break that out when we're doing it with our NetApp integration.
I think we're caught up on the other questions. The only other one was the SRM question, and you handled some of that already. Some of the questions that came up was, does VAO support solid fire? And I mentioned not for snapshots, just backups and replicas, but you can still use VAO. You just have to use the other method of doing that. Right now, the only snapshots are ONTAP, right? That's right. So only ONTAP is hardware replication we support. Now, if you've got other storage, it still works with VAO, but you'll have to use Veeam's software-based replication for that. And you can mix and match too. I can mix in hardware-based replication, software-based replication into these into VAO as well. So it's not all of one or the other. So how would that?
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
How would SIFs work? Do we first have to implement the Veeam backup and replicate portion for NAS?
Yeah. So this tool is VMware only, but that doesn't mean we can't orchestrate other things with it. So through the scripting mechanisms that you can add in, one of the most common things, and I used to do this with VMware Site Recovery Manager too, prior to me working at Veeam, was we would include a sequence in the process to do a SIFS failover. So it's common to use something called SVMDR to protect SIFS servers in ONTAP. So you can actually include an SVMDR failover step in this plan, so that your SIFs also fail over as well as part of this plan. So that's probably the most common way of doing it. Is just to add anything that's not a VMware virtual machine as a scripted option. So you can add in physical server failover, cloud level failover as part of this orchestration too, just via custom scripts or PowerShell.
Hey Adam,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so you just mentioned that VA also support SVM level replication as well. Like in NetApp, we have options to fail over the whole SVM as well. So does VA support that?
Not supported for virtual machines, and we highly well, I personally don't recommend using SVMDR for VMware data, right? Because we need to be able to look at each individual data store, and each individual data store needs to have a snap mirror relationship. And one of the problems with SVMDR for VMware is that the SVM at the DR site is completely offline. So there's no way to do any sort of testing with SVMDR without bringing the SVM online. And you're not allowed to have both SVMs online in an SVMDR relationship. So it's really not appropriate for VMware data. It works great for file shares and unstructured data, SVMDR, and we recommend that, SVMDR for that use case. But not for VMware. So I would avoid using SVMDR for any VMware type data, because you lose a lot of functionality.
Okay, thanks.
Another question?
Okay. Yeah, we'll let a few more questions go, and then maybe we should get close to wrapping up since we're a little over. But anybody else have any questions? And we're here.
You can review the infrastructure that's required for VAO versus an SRM appliance, SRA adapter, all that type of thing. So I saw you say VAO server. You create a Windows server for
Yeah,
For
Windows
this-
Server could be physical or a VM. All we need is a single Windows Server for VAO. You know, the implementation's a little bit different than SRM, where in SRM you have to deploy a SRM at both sites. For
Yeah.
VAO, we just need one site. It could be just at the DR site, or if you're trying to do active failover, that VAO server would have to sit in a third data center or outside a data center that it's orchestrating. Because we're a single install and not like a HA pair or a multi-site infrastructure deployment, VAO is a single deployment. So that's one of the key sort of architectural differences with VAO. Either deploy it only at a DR site or at a third data center if you're trying to do active or cross, active data center failover.
And as
Just
far
just a
as
single VM.
licensing goes, you only license one side?
You only license the VMs that we're protecting as part of a plan.
It doesn't matter what side you're pointing to then?
That's correct.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, this is a lot easier to use.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? Yeah, it's really cool. I know. And I'm old school, so I'm used to doing the run books and all. This is awesome. Yeah, it's great.
Can you actually
Great.
split the DR environment? Like, can you configure it in such a way that if the production goes down, it goes to 2 separate DRs, you split a few VMs on DR1 and another one on DR2?
You can just set up different plans.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, different plans, for different failover orchestration. So you could have,
Okay.
if you've got, let's say you've got 3 vCenters, and vCenter 1 might split off and fail over to different vCenters for whatever reason. You can absolutely set that up. You just would do it with separate plans.
Awesome.
And pricing is available now? We can just request it from Disty?
It's available today. Yep.
Yes.
Yep. And if you're a
Yeah,
VDR
I mean,
customer, mention DR Pack.
We can show, we can show you show you the pricing, but yeah, that's all you need to do. The DR packs are standalone. There's 2 options.
And it sounds like the only thing that I can replicate with this is another NetApp, right? Because I'm using SnapMirror.
Oh yeah, right. It's SnapMirror. Yes. If you
SnapMirror
wanted
for
to
that
do
hardware
something else, you'd
integration.
have to use the replica or backup.
We support any storage, but using Veeam software at the per VM replica. So if you've got, ONTAP on one side and something else at the DR side, you can still use VAO. You just not with SnapMirror, of course.
Right.
Okay.
Which means it'll work with each
Okay.
now.
One last thing was this lab calendar. And this is one of the major differences between this and SRM. I can actually schedule my lab, my full DR testing on an automated basis, and then have it spit out a report. So I got a nice calendar here, and I can specify, every Friday or every Saturday, the plan is actually going to fail over itself using data lab technology, and then send you a report on whether, what happened, and how long did it actually take to fail over, and things like that. So it's actually really cool. So that's the lab calendar.
Yeah, it is. This is really cool. It's pretty easy to set up, pretty easy to use. It's pretty awesome. So, Ryan, I don't know if we need to hand it back to you to wrap up, but I think we're complete at this point.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you both, Adam and Jeannine, for your time, and for all the participants that we have on the line. As we mentioned at the beginning, we did record this session, so we will be sharing out the recording after the fact when it's downloaded. We will also be sending back feedback forms just on today's session. If you could take a few moments to complete those, we would greatly appreciate the information that you've shared and make sure that it was relevant. Also, for each completed feedback form, NetApp will be donating $5 towards one of various charities that are on the feedback form, and some of them are local to the US, some of them are global to our global peers that we have around our 5 briefing centers, and they all go towards helping, I guess, transform this pandemic that we're all finding ourselves in today. So again, thank you very much,
Awesome.
Adam and Jeannine, for your time, and for all of our participants. And with that, I'll go ahead and I'll stop the recording and conclude today's session.
Thanks,
Thank you very
everyone.
much, everyone. Appreciate your time.